Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond the Code podcast. I'm gonna go around and say hi. I'm Miguel. You kind of already know me from other times. Over to one of you guys.
It's Ruben. You
Why?
pointed to Ruben.
So this is Ruben from talking from St. Petersburg.
And I'm Armando talking from home, as usual. With no
Okay.
curtains. Still no curtains.
Still
After
no curtains,
months.
so send that money in, guys. This is a really important thing for the guy to
I
get
will.
curtains.
I promise that I won't use money in buying all long promised iPad.
All right. Okay. Yes, we'll get to that. And the new face, the new kid on the block, as it were, is Sergio Dias, which we start by thanking for being here. Sergio, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, Miguel. Hello, Paul. I'm Sergio Dias. I'm at Lisbon right now. I'm working at OutSystems as a technical architect for the last 2 years. Okay. To tell you a bit about me, I need to go a bit further away and tell you a little bit about my story. I'm a software engineer. I've graduated from Technical EST, one of the most recognized schools here in Lisbon for engineering.
Most
And,
problematic.
No.
You need to survive it. You need to survive it. But I did, and after finishing my degree, I started a company. So I was involved in some project as a freelancer. I was helping my cousin with the hardware shop, and I got that taste for a business, and I decided to open a company and started my entrepreneurship, building a company for building an e-commerce product. So that's how I started. The main innovation that I had at the time was integrating the e-commerce store that was fully developed by us. I started alone, and then the team grew a bit. But were always a small team. And so as I was saying, the innovation was at the time, we are talking 2006, being able to integrate the store fully with an ERP system where all the stocks, all the articles, prices, and orders would go automatically between the two systems. So things evolved. The company grew a bit, but always a small company with small clients here in Portugal. And then when the financial crisis came to our door, we had a little trouble because our customers were very small. So we had to reinvent a bit ourselves, and I had to sell the business. We had to downsize a bit also. And I sold the business to one of our partners, that was WinSig, and my company was web-based. And this partner was mainly an ERP implementer of a software called PHC. It's a very highly known in Portugal. It's for small and medium companies. And then we keep on doing the same business for about 4 years. I was getting in the comfort zone over there, so I needed a different challenge, and I was on the 4th floor, and OutSystems were on the floors below. So I decided to apply to OutSystems, going down the stairs, and only 2 levels down now.
Do we see? Can we read between the lines there? Going downstairs.
For a coffee and an interview. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So I met Francisco for the first interview. He was here also.
By the way, if you guys, check out an earlier podcast, and you'll see Francisco over there. All right, so I'm just plugging in another edition. Go for it.
Yeah, I also went to other interviews, but I really was very comfortable with the OutSystems process, because I felt that people weren't looking for something that was already in a box. So a role in a box, someone that would come with the role specifications that they were looking for. So they tried to understand what were my skills and what were my abilities and capabilities, and that left me very comfortable, and I really wanted to work there because I really identify with the technology. In my product, I also have done some kinds of stuff that were accelerators and frameworks and stuff like that. So I really identify with the culture and with the product and everything. So for me, it was the number one choice. And after speaking with Francisco and some other guys during the recruitment process, it was clear to me that I wanted to work at OutSystems. And fortunately, I'm here now.
This was in what year, by the way?
2008, in January, I began.
18.
So
18.
Sorry.
Okay,
Sorry,
got it.
18.
So,
2 years ago.
And it is my understanding that you had very little knowledge of OutSystems specifically when you joined OutSystems, right?
Yes, as a technology, I've never dealt with it in the context of work. I only heard about it, had some notions, have done some experimentation, but I didn't have too much experience of OutSystems, so I had to learn everything from scratch. Entering as an architect didn't require me to be a proficient guy delivering OutSystems projects, so that also helped. But I had to learn everything from scratch, even architecture, everything. Fortunately, I was a bit from .NET stack for some years, SQL and MS SQL and .NET and C#. So I really knew the stack and everything that was being done behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. So that I think that helps because you can get it very fast and understand what's happening. So
okay. And you were immediately placed on a very big project, which is your current project still to this day, right?
Yeah, I was put in almost immediately. I went through a ramp-up process, of course, but then I was put in a very large project. It's a very, very challenging, and mostly at the time. And now I'm leaving. Currently, this week was announced, so I'm going to another position in the professional services in OutSystems. So I'm in a transition period for now, for a while, still in the project, but I'm going to have a different position now and to help manage people and other stuff and help influence the product as well. Okay. But the last 2 years, this was my main challenge, and we had the opportunity to do, I think, very impactful things on this project.
So, by the way, just a quick question. You mentioned like a big project, and actually it's important to set up here the scope is how big is big?
Yeah.
This is not a dirty question, okay?
Yeah, how can I say? We all know here, because we work with OutSystems, that big in OutSystems maybe it's smaller than in other projects. But since we develop faster, because we have a lot of accelerators, sometimes having a 30 developer project and about 50 people in all the roles means that in other technologies you would have a very large team to accomplish the same. So just to put things in perspective, because sometimes people hear us saying, oh, 30 developers, it's a lot, but they don't put this into perspective, because with OutSystems, if you develop, imagine 5 times faster, then you need to multiply this. Okay.
So just to recap, we are talking big would be 30, and how many?
Around 50 people in the several roles, because we have several roles between architects, front ends, quality, project management, support. So we work as a product team, so we have all those roles in place.
Okay. In very broad strokes, before we dive into like the technical challenges, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about your product, so people have an idea of what kind of questions might arise later on in the podcast? So what is the dynamic and the dimension, in fact, of what's being delivered in terms of?
Well, in fact, we have several products. I didn't want to go too much in deep on that, but it's in healthcare products or it's related products, and we have a considerably large factory, over 100,000 modules for those who know OutSystems. So it's a considerably large factory, and the main product is about half of that. So it's quite a challenge to manage this and to have several teams developing such a large project at the same time. And you have some concurrency between teams problems, like quality teams that need to test things as other teams are developing, teams developing the same things at the same time. So there's lots of challenges related with the dimension, and also related with the factory daily process of building and deploying and having environments set up so that all these teams can work in different contained situations, not having impacts on other teams. So that's one of the main concerns that we have. But now
you said you guys have over 1,000 modules already.
Yeah.
All right. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, because the project grew very fast in the beginning. So it started as a project and then evolved as a product and started to grow very fast. And then also the team grew very fast. And at the point that arrived there, I think that they were having lots of challenges related with that, because when you deliver so fast in OutSystems, then you get to a point where it's difficult to scale, because you need overall the platform itself will give you lots of accelerators and will facilitate you the process. But you still need to have a process in place, because we are developing software, we are developing a product. And sometimes I think some companies miss a bit on this, because they think that scaling software development is just put more people. And that's not the fact. So it's not the same thing to develop a small project with 5-member teams or with a team with 5 guys. It's totally different developing a project with 5 teams that are developing concurrently to the same things. So you need to have lots of processes in place. You need to have lots of automations in place. And when I arrived at this project, I think they were struggling a bit, because they grew so fast that they didn't have all the architecture concerns. So a lot of architecture work was already identified and was being done in terms of refactoring and aligning it with the 4-layer canvas that Francisco mentioned before. And this was already rolling. Just kind of concluded the thing and tried to understand where we could still improve and have more impact in the daily work. Okay. And then we started to do it because we started with what we called a core team that only was doing re-architecture. Okay, then we start moving these to splitting it into smaller pieces, doing it during development. As we change something, as we do a new feature or user story, we try to address this in these architecture issues at the time. So we introduced also a concept of architectural review before sprints. So the delivery managers that we now call product owners, and I will talk about that after, would have to talk to the architecture team, that was me and Diogo Nesbitt, to review what was the solution they were proposing to implement in that sprint. And with this, we started to accomplish 2 things. They were doing the things in the right architecture. We are fixing stuff that wasn't okay. And the third thing, I said 2, but 3 things. The third one,
off by 1 errors are very common in programming.
I
right?
only know, I don't know count more than 2. And the third thing is they were also learning. So today we have a lot more proficient guys in our tech leads about architecture. The reviews are quite easy these days. Sometimes we have different perspectives on things, but essentially things aren't wrong. Okay, so we started with a difficult baseline. Now we evolved a lot through time. So architecture was one of the issues, but me as an architect, that should be my scope at the time. But I started understanding that we had other issues, and mainly related to quality, okay, and to the speed of development, to the speed of delivery, and to the pace that we are delivering. And so I was trying to identify where we could get better. So to the speed of delivery, one of the things that I quite understood is with so many modules, it's not practical for you to be refreshing everything during the day. So because we have too many dependencies. So on the architecture work, we are focusing on reducing these dependencies, but still it was difficult. So we started, I was looking at those guys were doing all contents, nightly builds, maybe once a week or every 3 days. And
just before we go into this part of testing and governance, you were saying, I still found it quite interesting that you were mentioning the introduction of people consulting with like an architecture board, what their plans were for that particular team. And just so we understand, what kind of teams do you have? For example, do you have a team that's just a core team that takes care of shared components and set on these meetings as well, sort of saying, oh, okay, that thing that you're about to do, that to you sounds like an artifact of your particular project. Oh, I've heard it on a Scrum of another team. So let's pull this to a shared component. What is the, how do you break up these things?
Well, we found a different solution. So when I got there, there was this idea of creating the core team, and that should be this architecture team would be established as this core team for the core components. But what I quickly understand is maybe we are going to have such a plus on doing that because of the nature of our product, because it's not the use case where you have a bunch of core components that you can use in different line of businesses. This is a core system. So everything is very interconnected, and being healthcare, it's even worse. Okay. So what we really understand from this is, okay, maybe we should do this different way, because being a core systems, we also have lots of layers, and because the concepts, the business concepts will be related with themselves in a lot of a big giant web. So and this is from the nature of the business. Okay, it's very difficult to have clear verticalization. And so from that, what we thought was, okay, let's put this in a different way. Let's establish the teams, development teams, and then let's say that the things that are common, we should be careful with them. And so only the delivery leads, the tech leads will manage these, will have governance, will have permissions to publish these components. Because these components are usually entities, related database or structures or libraries, things that will be consumed by lots of modules. And then we also put some rules in place. So we talked to the teams and we said, look, if you need to change that database, you plan it and you do it on the first day of the sprint. Because if something gets broken, it's the first day, everyone is starting, no problem. If you don't do changes in the middle of the sprint, or you avoid to do it on the middle of the sprint, try to do it everything in the beginning. And this kind of pick up, and I think we got lots of good results with this, because Then those guys were responsible for those modules that everyone was consuming, and no longer everyone was dealing with that, and that gave us the confidence for having our builds to work better every day, and also for the team not having things broken in the middle of the day. So we said only on the beginning of the sprint and at the end of the day, because after we can do null components to refresh everything, so less work is impacted. So we focus a lot on doing changes while not impacting the teamwork.
Okay. So basically, you don't have a core team per se, but you have the tech lead. The tech leads do these changes in the beginning of the sprint to try to minimize. By the way, how big are your sprints? I mean, I can imagine that on a big project, maybe you've got ginormous sprints, or not?
Yeah, in the beginning we have 1 month sprints. So because it was very difficult to handle the technical part, and with all the architecture problems and all those issues, so we couldn't get enough organization to have smaller sprints and accommodate all the stabilization that was needed. The first year was like this. The last year we managed to get to 2-week sprints. This puts some, because in 1 month sprints we have a whole week for stabilization, for fixing quality defects and fixing user story feedback and stuff like that. By reducing the amount of this work, by reducing the amount of defects and stuff like that, we gain productivity, and we manage to use this time to deliver features. We also invested in other things like developing unit testing and stuff like that, because the important thing is, if you invest in quality, then you don't have to do so much stabilization, and you have more confidence in what you are delivering. And if you do it in smaller batches, then this starts to pick up, and you start to gain speed. To a point that when we changed to 2 weeks, then the PO guys, the engagement managers, were struggling to keep up, because this is a complex business, and to define everything, to have sprint readies for development. And also the UX guys were struggling. But now I think we have the pace well controlled, and everything is going okay. When they were struggling, we had some of the times to introduce technical tracks to give more room for the functional people to work on the user stories and stuff like that.
I just want to know that our viewers, especially Miguel's employees, obviously, because they are doing nothing.
They're not my employees, they're my colleagues.
Are you hiring? If you are hiring, I could also get some free time to watch YouTube and getting paid for it. But they are asking things, so they are asking Sergio, what is the best what are the best practices regarding governance and way of working in building a product can be pushed also to CI/CD of a project in a client. This is confusing.
It's a very broad question, right?
Yeah.
I think that the question would be something like, what are the nuances of actually, when delivering a project, not necessarily a product, because you have been mentioning that this is a product and might there be some nuances. So when you are delivering a project, what are the nuances that you need to have in consideration in order to achieve CI/CD?
Okay, so for me, the main difference is, when you think of a product, you need to think long run. So you need to think in the long term, and everything you build, you need to think it like that. And when you're developing and when you're thinking the functionality, because sometimes the project mentality is, okay, I'm going to do this next month, I'm in another project, let me do this the quick way. in a product, especially us on architecture, we always have this concern. This needs to be maintained for several years to come. So this will go to several customers. So if we don't build it right, this will get us a lot of problems in the future. So, and if we need to build on top of this, and we will, okay, if you don't have the right foundation, you'll have this kind of problems in the future. So for me, as an architect, that's one of my main concerns when I'm working as a product, and I think the functional guys also, it's thinking how a business feature can be handled by the several customers in a generic way. Then you have some configurations and stuff like that to cope with the differences. But I think the greater challenge is around that. And then you have the delivery pace and the quality challenges also, because as a product, we try to organize ourselves in releases where we specify the feature that we are going to release on each release. And then we need.
How often do you release new big versions? Just so we understand a little bit what's the pacing.
Well, on this big project, okay, we have on this big product, we have around 4 months, okay, release. This now, and this is good. It was very high in the past. When I arrived, we had more than 1 year sometimes to release. So it was a more traditional way. Yeah, a more traditional way of doing things. Okay, we all remember that other softwares like Windows or something would release every couple of years or something like that. So I think that one of the issues was the confidence of the customer accepting the new release regarding quality. But we try to work with the customer for him to understand that if we deliver small batches, it's easier for everyone to handle quality, okay? Because in smaller batches, we'll have less defects. We need to check less things. I mean, we have a smaller delta that we can address. And also the teams still remember what is happening. If we have a very large release and then we do a regression testing in the end, when we find defects of this release, then no one remembers, and maybe the developer is no longer in the team, so no one really knows how to handle that, and that takes lots of time to fix things. So I think the trick is doing smaller and smaller batches. We are aiming to reduce also this time even further. So we are investing in quality automation to give us that boost, because one of the difficulties here is that we still rely a lot on manual testing, because this is a critical product, and something that is not working okay can have really bad consequences to people. So we need to be very careful, and we rely lots on manual testing. So we are trying to automate more and more to try and get this release even shorter, because as I was saying, shorter batches, it's more manageable in terms of quality. Okay, I didn't know if I answered all the questions.
I have a question. Yeah. I go first.
Yeah.
Okay. How many this is just temporary comments do you have in your project?
I think we have lots of those things, but from the legacy, okay. I think that we implemented other thing that's related with the question before, that is ownership, okay, and it's related with governance and is related with that. I think we saw a lot. One of the biggest boosts that we saw was when we implemented ownership over the different areas of the product. So we had to find a way to kind of verticalize the product, and it's not straight lines, okay, but we found a way to do it. And then when we found this way, we said this team only works on this part of the business, of the product, and this team works only on this part. And because before, the teams would work across the product. Okay, if a feature would go across the product, teams would go across the product. That's not very good, because then people are always working out of context in stuff that they don't understand. They take a lot of time to understand context. Also, the problem is the teams were constantly rotating people. Was kind of a sense that everyone needs to know a bit of the product. But this is wrong for me, because the product is so big that it's not going to fit in one guy's head, even if he's rotating every week. So we need to specialize people, and we built this ownership model of the product, and we established these divisions, and that would do a good match in terms of technical and functional and aspects of the product. And then with this, the teams started to understand that they were going to be responsible. They're going not to be tech leads or delivery leads, delivery managers, but they're going to be system owners. The engagement manager is no longer engagement manager is a product owner, meaning that is responsible for that area of the product, and the responsibility, accountability increased. And they are starting to understand that, okay, if I don't do this right now, in
it's
the
going to
future,
bite me in the ass.
Exactly.
And me personally, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So accountability increases. Those kinds of things go down. When someone finds those kinds of comments and stuff like that, they have the concern. So this is legacy. Maybe we need to review this. How can we improve this? And as we do not new stuff that go around those situations, we invest in improving this, and with this we get a more stable product, more consistent, and the quality is improving, and everything is improving. Other example is the defect resolution. In the beginning, I remember that was one queue for all defects in the product. So every guy on the product could go there and pick a defect to solve. So, but then this guy would look at that, would try to understand the context, one day is passed, no defect is fixed. So, and then the guy says, look, I don't understand this, I quit, and put it back to the queue. And then another guy comes for an alpha day or another day, and when the third guy, that is the guy that really knows a bit about that, it fixes in 2 hours. So imagine these multiplied by many, and the productivity starts to increase a lot, and the speed of the team starts to increase a lot. And so I think this was one of the main changes that we have done, introducing ownership, and that really contributed for a very big boost on our speed. And of course, we have governance in place to ensure that the teams are not messing around and trying to go over each other. We also do a sync meeting before sprints with all the tech leads for them to say, look, I'm going to do some changes on these modules. What are you going to do? And this is a very cool meeting, because sometimes they understand, look, this module, I'm going to do this. Well, wait, you already have something here. Maybe we should put this on the core modules below. And so we get these dynamics in other ways, okay, than having those core teams.
And so basically you kind of empowered and made people accountable for their particular point, and obviously, and you even sort of say like the bugs are assigned to the specific team, so people don't need to fix things somewhere else. Also, exactly. And you were mentioning, how do you, for example, if the engagement people or the product owners or the program manager has this particular big requirement from the client, how do you determine what is the sub team that should focus mostly on it? And a lot of the times I presume that something will clearly be like 40% this team, 20% that other team, and 40% the other one. And what is the dynamic of delivering this particular feature when you have teams that have some accountability?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that's tricky sometimes. Okay, and I think that the product management or the functional guys will also see this as a feature and don't quite understand the impacts of having one team going outside of his ownership and outside of the context. And I think sometimes they try to do that, okay? But what I see, it's the teams getting more and more empowered and saying, look, guys, that doesn't work. We have other samples, and let's try to plan this better and try to slice the things between ownerships, and this will work better. So usually we look into the feature and we say, this feature is mainly from this ownership, this foundation is mainly from this ownership, so let's try and plan this in a way that this team will build its foundation, everything that needs to be consumed. If we need to release, meanwhile, we'll need to have some feature toggling to disable these things, and then the other teams can pick up on this foundation and reuse and consume what needs to be consumed, actions or entities or stuff like that, and build on their ownership with the things that are related. So it takes a bit more of effort of planning, okay? But I think it's worth it, because in the long run, if what we are doing is protecting the quality of the product, and this has lots of impacts in speed and productivity, in the pace of delivery, in everything. So if you have this in mind, I think it's a good compromise. It's not very easy on the planning side, okay? So it's a challenge for the product management. I understand that, but we need to try and get somewhere in the middle to achieve this.
And okay. So going back to we can interrupt you when you were in flight going into quality, and now you mentioned quality again. Let's go back to where you were trying to go. What is the current status of regression testing, et cetera, et cetera? What is the current dynamics and even the current technologies you might be using to support this quick validation of new deliveries? Yeah.
So we now have unit testing being done every day in the development environment. To do this, we also implemented lots of automation for CI/CD. We have a custom CI/CD process in place, because without that, wouldn't be able to have everything built and deployed in conditions to have tests to run on top of that. And also to be able to be completely automated, where the tests run after the build is done. So automation for us was key and was essential, also to give us quicker feedback loops on builds and stuff like that. And by doing this every day, every day the teams have feedback on what the tests results were. And if we have 3 or 4 days the unit tests are not being passed, it will open a product defect. And so management will have visibility on that, and
automatically?
And the tech leads and everything. And so to close the release, we'll have to have everything fixed and everything run. Sometimes it's not quite there yet, but I think we are getting there. And then what we have done, we still rely a lot on a quality team. We have a quality team. We try that this quality team works most with the developers during the sprints, but they also have to write test cases. They also have to do regression testing at the end of a release, and that takes a lot of time. But I think the main thing is automation, and then we have UI automation. So we have built a regression testing with automation that is running every day, and every day is being fixed for when features are changing screens and stuff like that. So every day we are getting feedback also to the development teams of things that this automated regression is catching. Okay,
Are
so
you
I think that
using Selenium or any other tool?
we are using Catalan.
Okay.
Catalan. We are using Catalan for UI automation. We are using UTF framework for unit testing. We also have BDD, and guys from OutSystems will recommend BDD. But from an historical point of view, we already have some tests and done, and we wanted to fix those, and the team was more familiar already with that. So let's keep it. We also implemented the test framework and integrated it with the UTF framework to get the dashboards with the runs every day. We have done some features to try and understand the coverage that we have on tests. Okay, but as I was saying, I think the main message is shift left everything the most you can. So shift left your feedback loops most you can back to development, because if you catch something on your daily development work, that means that you don't catch it in production. In production, the cost will be exponentially higher. So the more in the forward in the process that you find something, it will have a higher and higher cost to solve. So as much as we can, shift left, and that's my main advice for everyone.
Okay.
I have a question now, Armando.
Okay,
So
go ahead before I go into our
Armando,
viewers'
you
questions.
we just won't shut up, Armando, right?
yeah, impressive. So actually, you mentioned several things, namely test automation that you are doing, unit testing, and so on. But you also started by mentioning that you have actually a lot of manual testing.
Yeah.
So I have two questions about that, which is, first of all, also you only release a major version every 4 months, due exactly for the high level or for the time consuming of manual testing. So my question is, first of all, in a project with 30 developers, how big is your QA team?
Okay.
Product.
We have 5 guys at the moment.
5.
So it matches 1 guy per team.
Okay. And is the QA team also responsible for automating the tests, or they are only responsible for manual testing?
At the moment, they only write tests and they do the manual testing. We have an external team doing the automation. We are thinking if it's the right module or not, but at the moment we have this external team that built this regression and it's maintaining it. Okay.
Cool. Armando?
Okay, thank you. So we have 3 different questions from our viewers. Okay, I'm going to do them the other way around, just to match the flow we are getting. So the first one is, if the quality team works at the same pace or sprint than your development team, or are they working ahead? Well, ahead not really, but behind or at the same pace?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think we still struggle a lot with this process, because the QA team for me, they shouldn't be a separated team. Should be really inclusive in each team. So I said we have one guy for each team, and we are already assigning this guy to each team. So that's okay. But they also work as a team because they have some tasks that they need to work as a team. And I think in that point we are almost there. But then with this regression that takes so many time, as Ruben was saying, it's difficult for them to stay working very aligned with the development teams. And I think that's where we need to improve, because I think for me the ideal thing is for them to be the most aligned as possible with the development team. meaning that they should work on the grooming. They should help working on the grooming of the user stories and trying to have some kind of testing or acceptance criteria already thought on before the user story is implemented. It's ready. They should help the team during the development phase to ensure that we can fix most of the things by the end of the sprint, meaning that we don't accumulate defects for the end of the release or for after the release when we are certifying. So for me, shift left everything. So work with the team. This should be the best way to do it. In our use case, since we have the necessity of doing this regression, this large regression, or while we still have this necessity, it's going to be a struggle. So what we are trying to do is to understand if we can increase the automation, okay, to give us more confidence, and maybe trying to understand in our releases if we have some kind of risk assessment before when we are doing the planning of the release to understand, is this release going to do large changes that will have a higher risk, or can we do a lower risk release, smaller release that with automation and some fewer tests that only focus on what is changed, and we can reduce this work. So it's a challenge, it's a work in progress, and we are trying to understand a better way. But if you don't have this necessity for a large regression, I would advise shift left and start as soon as possible with the quality team.
Okay, so that was the first question. Let's go to the second one, which is, what is the structure of the foundation teams?
So what roles, what makeup the people have, like tech leads and stuff like that? Is that it?
Okay, the delivery teams, it's what you're saying, the product teams. We call it product teams because we think that a product team should be something more cross-functional, okay? It's a concept that you can also follow some information on Spotify. That's a good source for the information about this. And cross-functional meaning that a team, and my interpretation, it's a bit different from Spotify, but my interpretation is a cross-functional team should have the competences to do kind of a small product by itself. So a small product team should have a UI guy, should have an architect, should have a front-end guy, should have a quality guy, should have developers, should have a tech lead, should have a product owner. This would be the best team composition for me. So this team would be able to do a small product by itself, and because they have all the competencies inside. But how can we achieve this in an optimized way? So in our case, what we do is we have the system owner or the delivery manager, as you know it, and 3 developers. Okay, so the system owner plans the sprints and is the tech lead for the team. Developers implement. Product owner, it's in pair, managing the team on a more functional way in pair with the system owner. And then the other competencies, we need to get them from the other teams. Or me as an architect, I see me as a percentual of each team. Okay. So yeah. And the front end needs to be the same thing, and the quality team needs to be the same thing. And so we are a shared resource for every team, but we are part of each team. And that's the way that we need to see it, because it's a way to break silos. If we don't do it this way and each team works in a separate way, then lots of things start to get broken. We had issues with front end, we had issues with UI, because we are working like a factory line where this guy does the UI, then this guy does the front end, and the team does the implementation. And every time you do this handover from one team to another, you are losing information, you are losing coordination, you are losing a lot of stuff. So we need to have in place a way for these teams to be cross-functional and for them to communicate in an agile way, for them to be integrated and being, participating all the time in what is being built for that sprint. Okay, that's my view, and I think that's what we are trying to do, and we are having success with this model. By opposition of having a more siloed model that we had before.
Okay. Final question. So feature flags. Okay. How do you approach and if you have any allegedly best practices to manage feature flags within the context of your product?
Can we step back before going into that?
Okay.
First of all, presumably the feature flags, do they influence? So, for example, your individual clients, do you have several different versions or different flavors of the product in client A versus client B? And are they then based on feature flags? And then the practical question that Armando just asked. So I don't know if it's worth talking about how different the paces are of your several clients, and then go to feature flags.
By the way, guys, just a quick thing. Sorry to interrupt you, Sergio. We have 9 minutes, and we still have to reserve 2 minutes for Miguel. He has a personal announcement.
So it's not his birthday.
Yeah. He's not going to buy everyone a beer, but
no, it's not my birthday.
So Sergio.
Okay, I'll let you guys tell me when we need to stop. So regarding the feature flagging and the delivery process, so our customers will get releases of the product. It's the same product, and sometimes they are in different versions. Okay, and we try to keep them as much as we can up to date. It depends a bit on their side also, because they also need to validate and do user acceptance testing. From the differences between the different customers or the final customers, what we have is we have some extensibility capabilities. Okay, we have kind of a notion of a plugin. So something, when we address a new feature, we try to understand how can we do this to be used by the several customers. Okay, if we can't do this, and this is very specific, we then have some extensibility capabilities, like a plugin that is a module that will have code that will only be installed in this customer. Or we can have some other extensibility things, like having dynamic forms or dynamic reports or stuff like that. And so this is kind of the way that we solve those differences. Regarding feature flagging, we don't use it for distinguishing between two different customers. We only use it at the moment more for if something is not a feature that is not completed yet, or something that we feel is not right to be delivered in the version. We can turn it off, and we will put a feature flag specifically on those things. And for now, we don't have something very sophisticated to do that. We have site property that is put there. We hide everything with ifs. But and in the future, when in the next release, we should remove this feature flag if because if you don't do that, it will be unmanageable at some point. But I think that in the future we might have some best practices coming from OutSystems. There's some internal talk about that. Okay.
In terms of adding some feature toggling to the product?
Oh. No, I'm not talking about set practices.
Oh, that's good. So you heard it here first, folks. Okay. So
carrying on. We still have 4 minutes before your big announcement.
No, well, like it's not. Come on, it's big announcement. These guys are incredible. Just okay. So I'll just step on my soapbox. We're talking about big projects, so I just wanted to give a shout out to because today my biggest project so far, which is my eldest daughter, turns 18. So she's out of acceptance, and now she's basically graduated to a full-blown project. So it's just a shout out to the kid, right? So that's basically it. I just commented with these guys offline, and they just go and do this.
True.
Our pleasure, and congratulations for your go live of your project.
Yes,
you know that our viewers know that if we find something to make someone uncomfortable, we just go after that.
Well, yeah, and I should know it even better than our listeners.
Yes, yes, because otherwise it would just be boring. Because know, like people hearing us for 1 hour talking about serious stuff.
That's heavy, man. That's heavy.
Yeah, that's why they work.
It's my fault, no?
No. It's Miguel's fault. It's always Miguel's fault. So it's not. You have been very interesting, but Miguel is it's Miguel. So
very
insufferable.
Very serious.
Okay, so we still have 4 minutes left. Do you guys?
Well, we never said this is going to be 1 hour, right? We just said like we don't necessarily need to fill in 1 hour. I mean, we don't get more payment from our advertisers if we get 1 hour, right?
Yes,
we get any
do, but only myself. No, I'm just joking. Not sure if you guys have any wild card question to finish.
Challenge.
Actually, you mentioned I might have one very quick that you need to be very quick, Sergio, which is you talked about that the project transition, the product, transition from project to product, and this happens somewhere in time. So can you just give us a glimpse of, first of all, how did that happen? How is that this is no longer a project, this is now a product? And how did it happen? And second, what were the main pains, the 3 main pains of actually, now this is a product. Blin, this was a project before. Now I'm suffering.
I don't know all the history because that happened long before I arrived, okay? But from things that I was told, I think from the things that I witnessed at the arrival, I think one of the challenges was that they grew the project by adding more people. Okay, so some guys told me, look, we used to have a scrum meeting with all of the guys in the team who took 1 hour or 2 for everyone to speak. So this gives you an idea that, and if you are an architecture guy, you look into Conway's law, that your architecture will mimic your organization. So if you have a big team, you'll end up with a big product, a big monolith. And I think that what happened. So what we needed to do in order to get more decoupling between in the architecture was also to have an organization that is more contained in several product teams. And this organization of the teams and then the ownership and everything also contributes that for you to maintaining a more efficient architecture, because if you only put more people, the tendency of the team is to have a larger and larger product and not keeping those sound barriers between, because as we discussed before, now when we have something that is a feature that is very horizontal, the teams are saying, calm down, I need to do this on my side, you need to do that on your side. And so that enforces the architecture. And I think it's one of the main things is for people to understand while scaling is how do we transition from one team to several teams, and how do we grow? And we need to put all this mindset in place. We need to account for teams, for architecture, for automation of the factory, for lots of stuff. So it's very different from building something with one team from building something with several teams, especially if it's the same product, not very different business portals or something like that.
Awesome. Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
All right.
Well, I have
We need
one
to wrap,
final
right?
question. No, well,
Oh.
yeah, but I can ask one final question, which the answer is only you only have three possibilities of answer. Okay. So, how do you plan your sprints? Using hours, points? Well, none or none, yeah, because both would not.
Hours.
Okay.
Hours. Estimation of hours.
Okay. Okay, that's it.
Doesn't mean that needs to be strict, but it's about hours. I think it's for me. I think it's easier for people understanding time boxes with hours, but there are other modules around there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess we're done for today.
Yeah, I mean, we could continue this for many more times. So probably, Sergio, at some point we might try to talk you into. But now you're wiser. You're gonna say no, right? Talk you into joining us again at some point.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, me
Yeah,
and
but-
Ruben have developed the Stockholm syndrome, so that's why we are still coming.
Yeah. We cry every morning before coming, but then we ended up like, no, we
Yeah.
have to.
You just love this pain.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Please be
so
my
awesome.
guest.
thank you so much,
thank you.
Sergio, for joining us.
Thank you
And
for the
see you.
invite. See
Thanks
ya.
for the insights, and everyone that's listening to us, thanks for sticking around for 1 hour, and see you next time on the flip side. Take
With
care,
some
everyone.
Benny Hill on the
Bye.
intro. Don't forget about it. Okay?
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.